Okay.
There's a lot of feedback though. Fuck. What I just said.
Things that have things to do with other things. And yes. Okay. All right. Okie dokie. Hi, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. We're working on audio, so we'll be live soon. What happened? Oh, no. Okay, that's fine. Hi, everyone. Yep.
All right, everyone should be able to hear both of us, question mark?
Can everyone hear us? Are we added to this scene?
Yeah, we should be. Yeah. I'm
Okay.
showing we're reading fine on my OBS, but
Okay, so if they're saying yes, they can hear us.
all right. Sorry, guys. Had not planned on running this tonight from my computer, so it was a very quick setup. Like literally, we started setting up 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, so yeah, we're here now.
Okay,
Hello.
it says Pat can only hear you.
No, he said he can only hear me and you. He can't hear everybody. He's being silly.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I was
He's
so
making a
confused.
joke.
I laughed.
Well, hello everyone. We're here tonight doing LMA. John's out for work, and so we're running the ship tonight, and we're talking about writing and running one shots because we know a thing or two about that at this point. I feel like. So yes.
One shots. How's everybody doing in the heat today? I know here in Michigan, where we don't understand what heat is, it felt like 100 degrees.
Yeah. Staying inside is good. That's smart. Good choices.
So hopefully things are doing better where you're at. All right, one shots. Where do we begin?
Oh. I guess like what's a one shot for anybody who doesn't know about one shots? So yeah, one shots for anyone who doesn't know, which I think most people here does, but just to give a general overview because we do upload these to YouTube later for people to watch. Is that they're your little 4 to 6 hour sessions that you can do with a small group. It's a single one-off game. And they're really fun to do, especially for things like conventions and when we need to fill a space in the stream sometimes. But yeah. And that's a one shot, basically.
And so, as Evelyn said, between 4 to 6 hours, I know you could probably get down to 3 hours depending on how it's written. And we are talking specifically about writing our own one-shots rather than using pre-built one-shots. I know that Paizo has pre-built one-shots. I believe there are D&D pre-built one-shots, at least in the 5e space. And those are fantastic. Those are written very well and lovely. And what's great about pre-written ones is you need something quick, you need something fast, boom, boom, you're there, you've got it, you're ready to rock and roll. But if you have the time, writing your own one-shot can be a lot of fun. And it is, how would I put it? Not for the faint of heart.
No, definitely not.
I know, having just written and done my first one shot, it even with something like Pathfinder 2e, which is very easy to create encounters for, judging how your players are going to respond is, I think, the most difficult part.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in groups like what we've got sometimes, which can be heavy role play aficionados.
Mm-hmm.
30 minutes, 20 minutes of intro, 10 minutes of combat versus dragons, krakens, and Cthulhu. Oh, why does that not surprise me with you, Pat Draws? So let's dive in and look at what is your preparatory? How do you begin your preparation?
Okay, so like when you sit down to write a one shot, you kind of have to consider, first of all, how many players you have, because that affects the amount of time that you need to plan out for. I was taught that about an hour at least per player is reasonable for one shot. So the more players you have, the longer that one shot's going to run, and that's something to keep in mind. But one of the things that I do when I sit down to write a one shot is I consider, okay, what's going to be my major goal that I want my players to achieve in this? How do I want, what is the very loose breakdown of the story that I want to tell? What are they going to do? What's their objective? And I also try to generally, especially if I know my players in advance, I tend to try to cater the one shot to those players as well. So, because I want to make sure that they're enjoying themselves, and not just me going, here, this is what they're doing. It's going to be great. So that's something that I keep in mind. And then once I figure out the overarching ideas, and then I start kind of fleshing out, okay, so how many combats do I want to have happen in this? Am I going to give them time for a decent amount of RP? Is this going to be a RP heavier one shot, or is it going to be a little more combat heavy? And so those are the things I consider. And then, of course, the level of the one shot affects the amount of time that you need for it as well. The higher level you are, the more time you're going to need for it. And that is something that is, very true. So most of my one shots tend to be kind of mid-level. I did do a level 20 one shot for the BlueBoxCon, which was fun, but it was a beast and a half to plan for. But yeah, so it's once you get the specific beats planned out within that overarching goal, then you start planning out characters, NPCs, that sort of thing, and fill into the story as you go.
And what you're going to find is you're going to find different people do things in different ways when it comes to developing them. So Evelyn and I develop in a slightly different way, in the sense that having done one now, I have a good feel of the direction that I want to continue going. And the direction is low level, generally speaking, and that is story based. What I found with writing my first one was that it was a lot of fun to create this world. But I wanted the world to have, I wanted it to be alive. I wanted it to, and for me, it's, and Evelyn knows because she was in it, it's about being a jumping off point that could be used for a greater use at some point. It could be used to develop something that is definitely a longer campaign if one wanted to. And the reason for me, I prefer the lower levels is more often than not with me, it's going to be people who have never used the system before. And when you've got people who are coming new to the system, and again, this is all relevant to who you have in your group. If they're new to the system, it can be overwhelming to sit down and have 9 levels worth of spells and in D&D actions, bonus actions, swift actions, because by the time you're as you're getting into the higher levels, you tend to have at least 1 or 2 for each of those things, right? A swift action, a bonus action here, etc. And so the higher you get, my feeling is, and you can tell me I'm wrong, is that you want players who are comfortable with the bones of the game, so that it's easier for them to pick up. I know with what's the title of mine? I can't even remember anymore. The Bones of Last Wall. There it is. With the Bones of Last Wall, we were level 4? Is that what I made us?
Yeah. Level 4.
And we were, about half the group had experience, or at least minimal experience with it. where others had like John had never participated in one, and learning the ins and outs of a system that's different. It would be like Pat Draws. Yep, Pat Draws was a noob to the system. Learning the ins and outs is, you don't want to have to worry so much about learning the ins and outs when it's a one shot, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You want it to flow smoothly. You want the fun to be there, and you don't want to make your players have to think too much about it. And even at level 4, I think there were times, especially with so, you know, D&D has what I'd call adjacent systems, other systems that have action, bonus action, etc. I mean, just this, something as small as going from that to the 3-action economy in Pathfinder 2, I found was something that the players took a little bit to digest before they felt comfortable choosing what they were going to do. And Patros wanted to blow all his spells in the first fight. You know, it never hurts to do that. And then, you know, so story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, you know me, I'm a story guy. And so when I started developing my first one, I thought, okay, what is the story? What are these characters doing? Why are they here? What are they? And what are they trying to achieve? I wrote it very much like, or not wrote it, but outlined it very much like you would a book, with a beginning, a middle, an end. An inciting incident. We're going to go into playwriting here for a second, right? An inciting incident that starts the action. You've got your complications that grow until your climax, and then you finish with your denouement or your falling action, right? And it's like creating that mini story. So, Evelyn, how do you come up with your ideas regarding the story?
Well, for me, all of the one shots that I've written, except for my very first one, which was Honey Heist, everything that I've written that's been on Blue Box or, you know, around Blue Box, because I did one off stream during Blue Box Con last year. Everything for those have been from the world that I've been building, and just various places in that world, because I'm building it, I'm familiar with it, so I understand the history of it and how, you know, the stories would fit into those places. So having that frame of reference first, and then, like I said, looking at like the people I have playing and kind of the stories that they like to tell as players, is a big part of that as well, because you know, you can make a really fun story, especially when you have a group of people who really enjoy the role play aspect of it. And so, you know, it just kind of depends. I tie the story beats to the places, or like by and large, because, like I said, because I understand the history and I want to make sure that those things kind of help tell the stories that make sense for those places. So yeah, and then once I have that part in mind, I kind of also sit down and go, okay, what would the story be that I would want to tell? And what do I, you know, so I want to make sure that there's the vast majority, or the meaty part of the one shot is the actual story of that you're trying to tell. Because, you know, for me, combat is fun, but it's not my main objective when I am doing a TTRPG, as a player or as a DM. You know, I know people enjoy that, and I enjoy it too, but is definitely not my main objective. I want to tell a story, and I want to make sure it's a story that's fun. And so combat just helps enhance that, in my opinion. So yeah, so my main thing is just going, okay, what would be fun to me? What's interesting to me? What kind of characters would I want to interact with as a character in this place? You know, what sort of hooks can I put in that is going to help get my players excited about interacting with this world and this space and this story? So yeah.
Yeah, and actually, funnily enough, as things come up, I'm taking notes for other topics. So, um, because I think that is something to talk about is the idea of a one shot written in a homebrew world versus a one shot written in a world where lore is created by somebody like D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, or by Paizo for Pathfinder. And is it in a one-shot setting? Is it how much information do you have to give to your players? So, and the reason that this came up, and this is for a longer discussion, not right now, but the idea of, a one-shot set in the Forgotten Realms, right? Mm-hmm. You can go online prior to you participating in the one shot. You can go online. You can learn about the history of the Forgotten Realms. You can learn about the place that the one shot's being taking place. Whereas a homebrew world, you would more than likely want to ask your guide, what is the world about? What do I need to know about it? What do I need to understand, etc.? So that's something for, I think, a much longer discussion, but that kind of popped up. I was thinking about as you were talking about that. One of the things that I think you have to be amenable to when writing your one shot is the ability to withdraw pieces of the puzzle as the session goes on. Mm-hmm. I know in my session, there was a whole nother fight, and because you helped me a little bit writing it, which I appreciated a ton. But there was a whole fight that I ended up removing because we were within a time limit. Now, this is different. Obviously, we were streaming. And when you're streaming, you have to fall within certain parameters.
Right.
And to make sure that we came in under time, I pulled a fight that happens kind of in the middle of it. And we did go over a bit, but we were much closer to time than had we added that fight. When you're not doing it for performance sake, i.e. streaming or something like that, or maybe at a con where you have certain time slots that you have to fit within, then I think, as long as your players are amenable to it, you can go, as long as you are, right? I mean, hopefully they're enjoying it enough to continue with the journey. I did screw you out of loot. I apologize, Pat Draws. That was unintentional, but you guys were role-playing so wonderfully and so amazingly that I did not want to interrupt the role play for sake of clicky clacks. So I'm sorry. All right. So then what about the process of going back, editing, and preparing the one shot to run again?
Oh, see, that's something I haven't done before. I haven't. So, I have all my notes down from the various ones that I've run, but that running those again, I have not done that. Though I have actually started working on doing a second part of one of my one shots because it would be one of my, at least a couple of my players have had interest in continuing the story because I left them on a cliffhanger for that particular one shot. And so that's when I probably actually will sit down and write up in a way that could be run again as well, because I think overall was one of the ones that I enjoyed the most, and I feel like my players enjoyed it quite a bit. So, sitting back down, figuring what worked, what didn't work, and kind of even in like adding more to the story itself, filling in some more of the description and that sort of thing, that so that anybody could run it, not just me. I think is something you kind of have to think about, if it's something that you would want to put in a place to like even to have someone else run it potentially, like if you publish it or something like that, to make it where it's like, yes, this might be very obvious to me because I was the one who created it and ran it, but is this obvious to somebody else who might want to do this as well? So
yeah, and the reason I bring that up is because that's what I'm doing with Knights of the Last Wall. I've talked to you about this. Is I want to rework it. I want to play test it to get to a point where I can offer this as a one shot. For this would be my first one, would be a free, give it away, let people take it, let them enjoy it. But there you go, Lisa. But that would require me going back, writing it up fully, right? Because you saw my notes. They're a skeleton set of notes that we worked on, and kind of go from there. Pat Draws asked a great question regarding the one shot that he was in. If we started getting our memories back, why didn't John remember what he did to get shunned by Iomedae? And that is there are things that Pat, there are things with each of the characters that they didn't get full information on by the end of the one shot. That would have been coming soon. And that's why I say when I write my one shots, I tend to write them as a piece that can continue to be built upon. Now, this one shot is different than some one shots because this one shot very much was built to play as skeletons. And so it would be harder to incorporate into somebody's full campaign. Some of the one shots that I have run or participated in could very easily have been pieces that people could have already had their own player characters, and you can incorporate those player characters into the one shot. And so this one shot specifically would be one of those that he would have gotten that with a continuation of the campaign. Hi, Chef Hunter, as well. I just saw that pop up in chat. All right, let's talk about variety within the one shot. What pieces, you talked a little bit about it. You talked a little bit about the role play, and a little bit about combat, but what other things can be incorporated when writing one shot?
puzzles are fun. I like puzzles. One of the things that you have to like with puzzles, one of the things you have to think about is how long is it going to take your party to solve it, because if you throw a puzzle at them that's completely impossible, or let me put it this way, if you throw a puzzle at them that might seem really easy to you but it might not be very obvious to them, you have to consider that, because it could take them a really long time and then you get bogged down in that, and then your one shot gets stuck forever in puzzle limbo. But that is something that I have included in a one shot, and because I did a couple of different puzzles in when we did Honey Heist, actually. But yes, other than combat, there's obviously, and role play. There are puzzles that you can do. You can have other kinds of encounters that are not that are kind of RP based encounters, where it's not straight RP, but they're trying to maybe reach an objective through this encounter. It's like social encounter. So that's a thing you can add to it. Yeah. can't think of anything else at the moment, but there are definitely other parts that you can definitely include.
So,
For
and
sure.
again, a lot of this depends on the system you're using. So, for example, in Pathfinder, we have what are called hazards. So we incorporated 2 hazards into the Bones of Last Wall, but there are also other things like, I know, and again, this is going to be dependent on your system. In Pathfinder, you have essentially ways to build chases, and ways to build diplomatic encounters. And they use something called victory points that you build up and spend as you go through whatever the encounter is. That is actually something I want to incorporate into my next one shot, is some sort of either chase or diplomatic encounter, because I think that again adds another layer. One of the things you have to be careful about regarding all of this is you have to make sure that it is part of the story and that story is succinct. Because if your story, if you just add random things to add random things, then your players may not be able to buy into that story. Again, it goes back to that beginning, middle, and end, right? You want that beginning, you want that middle, you want that end, you want that build up, and you want that release, as it were. What about creating Pregens versus allowing players to create their characters?
So I find Pregens are really, really helpful for especially like con games where you don't have a lot of time to sit and like help your players create characters. For the most part, doing it that way just kind of streamlines it, and then you also kind of know what the abilities of the characters you're playing with are, so you can kind of plan the one shot around that as well, so that not necessarily balancing it, but you kind of have a better idea of what you're dealing with and how everything fits together, how these stories all mesh in the context of the setting. But with the pretty much with most of the one shots that I've run, if I've had time to do it, I've actually let my players create their own characters, and I find that that's, especially when they're lower level, it's much easier for them to create the characters first of all, but it also helps give them a better sense of what they're doing, and helps them kind of figure out the class and everything that they're playing, so that they have a better handle of it when we're actually getting into the game proper. So you kind of have to spend a little less time helping them understand their characters because they've built them themselves. So it kind of depends, because if you don't mind walking your players through the characters you've created, that's perfectly understandable. But yeah, so it kind of, I like both ways. It just depends on the way that the one shot's being used and how it's, what setting it's in, I guess. That makes sense.
And I'm a huge pre-gen guy, I'm not gonna lie. In a one-shot setting, for me, I like building the characters to fit the setting perfectly. And again, part of that for me is being able to get the players to buy in immediately. Mm-hmm. I want them to have the character, look it over, little background to the character, because I want to give background so that they understand why their character is there. And that's actually one of the things I'm going to be fixing with Bones of Last Wall, because I don't feel like the background information I gave was strong enough for the players to be able to buy into their characters as much as I would have liked. Now, we had a wonderful group of players who very naturally were able to take hold of their characters and create them in such a way that was really engaging. But if in the long run I want to be able to give this out so people can run it their own, then I need to make it so that they can give it to a random player, maybe brand new to the game, maybe brand new to TTRPGs, right? And they can take it and boom, they can go and enjoy it. I was just looking at a note on something and I've lost it. What things do you have, Evelyn?
Related to
One shots.
yes, I've been talking about one shots.
I mean, it does happen to be.
Yes.
What about session 0 for one shots?
Yeah, so I kind of don't do as strict of a session 0 for one shots as I would like for a campaign, but I lay out kind of the expectations and then what, making sure that everybody's comfortable with everything that's going on when I initially message everyone who's kind of part of the group, like, here's everything. I want to make sure everyone's comfortable. And that's an important part of it too. And a lot of that too has been me giving historical information about the world as well, and giving them the information about their backgrounds and like where they would come from. So especially for the ones where I'm having my players build their own characters, that way they have as much knowledge about the world as their character would and where they're from. So yes, it's like basically a massive lore drop on all of my players all at once. But at the same time, that gives them the opportunity to kind of dig into it. And so that way they're not kind of wandering in the fog about what's going on. So, and I usually do a bit of a general, like, this is kind of the place that you're going to be in what it's generally like there. I don't want to give away everything about what the one shot is going to be, but enough information so they have kind of a sense of what they're about to play in. I try to do that with any of the one shots that I run. So yeah.
No, and that sounds a good way of doing it. I'd been doing a little bit of research, and a couple of people brought up the CATS method from Patrick O'Leary. And what the CATS method is essentially, it covers 4 things: concept, aim, tone, and subject matter. And so the concept, for example, pitch the game at high level. What's it about? So, for example, Conan-like fantasy in a desert country. People are cruel, monsters uncommon, and magic is rare but terrifying. So that's kind of the concept, right? The aim, what are we trying to accomplish? Can someone win? Everyone lose? Are we telling a specific type of story? So the example is to have fun together, find out what happens, and fill the characters' lives with adventure. So now we've got concept, aim. What's the tone? What is the tone? Serious versus gonzo, action versus drama. Are there options for gameplay? So an example would be grim, but the players are free to interject humor when appropriate. If things get gonzo, we will break to get it out. And then subject matter. What ideas might be explored during gameplay? Do they make anyone uncomfortable? Discuss and set boundaries. So for the example is a savage world with tribalism, slavery, torture, off-screen, human sacrifice, and necromancy, and using the X card. So this is a real good way, especially for one shots where you maybe not do a complete session 0 and go through all the things that you would at a normal table. This kind of gives information regarding it very very kind of tucked in, succinct, etc. I will so this is, I'm going to toss the link into, if anybody's curious, for the post. It's right there. But yeah, so I found that interesting. I thought, wow, that's a great way, especially, and again, it goes back to, if you're running one at a con or something like that, that is a good way to kind of share with people who you may not be able to get a chance to talk to ahead of time, which, sometimes happens. Luckily, with all my one shots, I've always had a chance to kind of chit chat with people and answer questions ahead of time. But there bound to be a day that comes where suddenly I'm doing one where, I don't get a chance to chit chat with people. Let me see. Any questions pop up? I haven't seen any.
Not so far that I've seen.
Okay. I just wanted to. That was quick. Favorite source for one shots if you don't want to homebrew one? Oh, well, I mean, I'm going to say Paizo. They've got their official one shots. I think there's 4 of them currently. And then they have their Pathfinder Society, which can easily be used for one shots. And then they have their bounties, which are literally 1-hour adventures that you could use for a one shot. I think D&D's got some one shot. Wizards of the Coast, have they released some? I'm assuming. I know Pathfinder Infinite has some on there. And what's the D&D version of Pathfinder Infinite? It's like RPG Drive-Through. Is that what it is? So I think RPG Drive-Through also has D&D one-shots. But that's a great question. Obviously this VV is about writing and running one shot. Oh, I guess and running, those are different things. Okay. Yeah. All right, VV, you got me there. You got me there. Damn it. All right. Artificial turf. I lost the game.
But anyway.
All right, continuing on. Let me think. What other things to talk about when talking about one shots? If you're just doing the one shot for you, if you're not writing it to let other people use it, you don't need a ton of notes if you have a fairly good understanding of your space, of your lore, of your etc. And so there's that question. Railroading is almost a given when running one shots. Correct, especially on a time crunch. What ways do you like to use to keep players on track? How do you adjust for that? I'll let Evelyn answer first.
Okay, so basically one of the major ways is having specific points in the story that I want them to hit, and knowing exactly where those kind of fall in the course of the one shot. And one of the ways to do that is actually have the players involved in moving that along. And how I mean that is by giving them things to do, giving them objectives, having them do perception checks and things like that, because it helps kind of, if they can see something, then it pulls them in the direction that you want them to go, basically. And sometimes they might get distracted by an apple seller who was an adventurer once upon a time, just as a loose example from no particular one shot. But those things that connects everything through. And sometimes, and you talked about this a little bit already with Bones of Lastfall one shot, but sometimes you have to cut things to keep them on track, and in the amount of time that you have for that. So I have cut combats or compressed them into one, and kind of redone the combatants on the fly, either gotten rid of one or kind of switched things around to do the one that made the most sense for the story, just to tell the story within and meet the objectives that I want to meet. So that's a major way, and just kind of subtly be steering them as you go. I don't think you have to be heavy-handed with most players. But kind of keeping them focused on the story without letting them wander too far from the path.
Yeah, I think you have to railroad to the certain extent that you have to finish in a time period, right? And most players coming into one shot tend to be okay with that. I think they're comfortable. They understand that they're there for a short adventure, and they will kind of roll through and enjoy it. You may at times get those players who can be trouble. And your best bet is to, find a way to allow them to have their fun but it may mean, again, as I said earlier, you may have to cut a piece out, or you may need to jump forward somehow. I think there are different things that you can do that, wow, Vivi, did you message her and say, hey, Vivi, ask us a bunch of questions?
Nope. She's doing this all on her own.
What is one story point you had to leave out of a one shot you wrote because of timing reasons that you wish they had encountered? All right, so fine, I'll give the game away. I left out the fight with the necromancer that brought the skeletons to life. So in Bones of Lastwall, we fought the guards at the very beginning. They were then supposed to fight a necromancer and 2 goblin type creatures. And then they would have finished out with the final fight. But I had to cut out the middle one because the role play was just too phenomenal, and we were enjoying that part of it. Evelyn?
So in the I'm blanking on the name of the one shot that I wrote, but the one that was the pirate based one, there was actually a whole nother section that the characters were supposed to get to that would have revealed a little bit more about their past, and that would have been a little bit of a different sort of challenge. There was supposed to be, so the storm that rose up as part of the combat for that actually was supposed to be kind of a separate thing that they were supposed to deal with. It was sort of like a hazard, but not a hazard, because that was before PF2E was really a thing I understood. But it was kind of that idea. And they were supposed to kind of learn a little bit more about their history and how they connected to each other, because there was a little bit more there, but I had to kind of cut that out for time's sake, just because we were running a little long that night. So yeah, that was one of the major ones.
I love this question from Pat66. Do you use one-shots to play test fit new players to your group? I think that is a wonderful way of doing things. Now, do I feel you get all of your information in a one-shot? No. But I think you can get a sense of it, especially players who you're not familiar with at all, right? So the one-shots I've run generally have been players that I've been familiar with. Like, players in mine have been people like Robert and Petros and Obsidian Risk and Evelyn and Vivi and lots of people who have already played with me. But I could definitely see it as a way of using it to see if somebody could possibly fit within the realm of what you're creating. I think that's a great idea. Evelyn, I think you need to answer, what food do you like to eat when you run your one-shots?
I usually don't have time to eat when I'm running a one shot. I'm lucky if I can get a drink of water in there usually, because it's, unless you're kind of at a point where the players are RPing a lot and you don't really know if they're going to or not. But if they're, RPing a lot, that you might actually not have to talk for a minute, but you never know. And especially if you have NPCs that they might want to interact with, you're not eating much. But yes, yeah, I have snacks that I enjoy as a player when I'm playing in a game, but there's not things that I can really do when I'm DMing.
Lots of water. I drink lots of water when I'm DMing.
Yeah. You don't want to have dry mouth when you're trying to tell a story.
Do you have a reoccurring NPC you like to use for games and one-shots? For games, yes. Though I haven't DM'd a lot of games. In my current live game, I reintroduced a group of rival adventurers that were from a previous game that I was in. And those adventurers may show up in other locations moving forward, just with different names and different ancestries and different classes. But I haven't DM'd enough to reincorporate people into now with Pathfinder 2E, because I'm really in love with the Galarian lore, and much of what I do is within that. I could definitely see some of my PCs recurring there. Like, I could totally see some of my PCs from Atari that are current NPCs from Atari that I'm currently using showing up in Alkenstar. But at the same point, I love writing new NPCs. And so, there's that. What about you, Evelyn?
So I haven't had a recurring NPC yet. I have, however, utilized a past player character as an NPC, a version of a player character, because Millie was actually the Pirate King or a version of Millie was the Pirate King in my Pirates one shot that I did. So it just made sense. She was very much the character that would do that. And so yes, it's like an alternate universe version of her, but yeah, that was yeah.
Pat 66, do you use one shots to introduce new systems to players? I don't know, Evelyn, do I?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm trying to introduce everyone to Pathfinder 2e. That is my job. Pat draws, don't mention Dead Mario. She's actually in there, but that's a later on in the campaign. But yes, I feel like one shots are a great way. If there is a system that you love running and you want other people to enjoy it, if you have passion about the system, running a one shot is really a great way to get them interested. I've managed to snag several people for my Monday night that way, who are now playing Outlaws in Alkenstar. So I think, that is a great way. I mean, honestly, that I think is probably your best way to get people interested in the system that you like, is saying, yo, look, I'll run a one shot for you. Come enjoy, and letting them pop off.
Yep. What was your first one shot about? That was V's next question, and I can.
You go first. I know what mine is, so you go first.
So my very first one shot, and Vivi was unable to participate in this. She was unavailable that evening, but was based on. So there's lots of one-page one-shots out there, which are great, especially when the first time you're DMing. And I really, really, really was nervous about like creating something entirely from scratch for my first one shot, because this was the first time I was DMing at all in any shape, form, or fashion. And so, so there's a fellow by the name of Grant Howitt. He has written tons of one-page one-shots, and Honey Heist was the one I chose, which is really fun and really kind of ridiculous. And you should definitely go check out his stuff, because he's written a lot of really fun one-shots. But he basically gives you the framework for it, and then you get to create kind of this thing. And they're a group of bears and a honey badger, and they are literally trying to pull off a heist during what is supposed to be HoneyCon 2020, whatever year it is, because you do it up to that, and you can kind of make it whatever setting you want, really. But I made mine kind of noir-esque, with like very caricature-y, like the agency that gave the bears their quest was very like straight out of an old noir film kind of characters. And then there was the very helpful Midwestern con host who helped explain what was going on. And it was a lot of fun. And it having at least a loose framework of it helped me take some of the pressure off of me, and helped keep me from being too anxious about it, and everyone was having fun. So it went way off the rails for a little while there, because everyone was checking every single door. But we got there in good time. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and that was my very first one shot that I did.
My very first one was the Little Trouble in Big Absalom. It was a party of 4 or 5 kobolds. I can't remember. I know Robert was in it. Kayla was in it. Kristen might have been in it.
And Josh was
in it. And I did it because I wanted to run a one shot. I had started my first campaign with Extinction Curse, but I wanted to run something that wasn't just a bunch of my friends. I wanted to run something with people who I wanted to see if I could do it for people that I knew weren't gonna or weren't necessarily people who were just, people who were there just to hang. And it was a lot of fun. Kobolds in Pathfinder 2e are hilarious, and I love them, and they're adorable, and I want to hug them. And the group did really well. Now it is a one shot, but it can be split into 2 acts, and so we just did the first act. I've been waiting to do the second act. It will come out at some point, but it was real exciting and real tough for me because, like I said, it was my first time doing it for people that weren't just my friends. So there was a bit of nervousness around it. Do you recommend recycling one-shot material or combining material to ease the creation process? So I'll be recycling because once I finish writing a Book of the Dead, I'm going to want to run it a couple more times to play test it and see if there are other DMs who want to play test it. But for me, it's going to be one of those classic one-shots that I use to introduce people to it. I also want to write a level 1 beginner version that is very simple. It's like a toned down version of the beginner box for Pathfinder 2e that you can run as a one shot to really allow people to feel what it's like to come in to Pathfinder 2e. Things like the 3-action economy, things like the way spells work, which is different than in other TTRPGs, things like hazards, so stuff like that. So yes, I'll be reusing stuff, but not for the same people. What about you, Evelyn?
I haven't had the need to recycle material necessarily yet because I'm still kind of pulling from my existing lore that I have. But I think, given the right circumstances, there's enough that I could pull together like bits and pieces to make something interesting on really quickly if there was like short notice for something like that. It just kind of, it definitely would ease the process some if you were like, and especially if you've had other one shots that you've enjoyed and you can borrow like themes from or ideas from. That's useful too, but I haven't had to do that so far.
VVS, best one shot advice for DMs who are new to running one shot.
Don't overthink it. Don't overplan it. That's one of the things that's the trickiest part, is like trying to figure out the timing of everything. And also talk to other DMs who have run one shots because they will give you a lot of really helpful advice for like figuring out what works for other DMs is always helpful in my opinion, as far as like, especially DMs that I look up to and respect and trust in the realm, because that is kind of, I feel like they'll have helpful information. But yeah, it's like like I said, get the general gist of what you want to achieve down first, and then plot around that. You want all of the parts of your story because it's a good story has all of the parts of the story, your beginning, your middle, and your end. And then kind of fill in from there. And you might be nervous for your first one shot. I know I was, especially because I was literally running this one shot for everyone had a DM experience, basically. And I was like, I've never DM'd before. I hope they don't judge me for how like bad this is gonna be. But like just relax, enjoy it, and if it's something you would have fun with, a lot of times your players are gonna have fun with it. And so that's one of the biggest things. So.
And be comfortable with the story. And what I mean by that is, so for Bones of Lastwall, I was very comfortable with the story because I knew what the story was. I had written it up. I knew what each of the player characters, what their goals and motivations were. I knew what was happening in and around where they were. So I was very comfortable with that one. If you're doing a pre-made one shot, get comfortable with the material. Read it multiple times beforehand. Really know the in and outs to it, because when you do that, you are more comfortable presenting it and you're better prepared to improv on the fly. If you know who these characters are, what they're trying to achieve, the space that they're in, and something goes sideways, you can improv because you already know the hard stuff. It's just a matter of adjusting it. So know the story that you want to tell. Amanda asks, do you have favorite themes you like to do as one-shots?
I think one of the things that kind of is the core thing that ties my one-shots together, because I've done several different like overall like genre. I mean, it's all within the fantasy genre, the overarching fantasy. But I've done like pirates. I've done something set in the city. But I like stuff that has a good sense of mystery behind it. That's going to be something that there's a big question that you ask, and the job of the players is basically to answer that question. And I think that's, and with some humor tied to it, I like to, be able to have it be a little entertaining. Honey Eyes is probably the most like humorous one I've done, because it was kind of the most lighthearted and like based on certain archetypes. But yeah, I like something that's got a good sense of mystery behind it, I would say.
I want to make people cry. Let me rephrase that, I suppose. The ones I write, I like a good story, and I like drama, and I like this is just how I am when it comes. I want to tug at the heartstrings, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's always a tragedy, but I want those that are playing and those that are watching to have emotional reactions to what is happening within the game. And I think when that happens, it's amazing. One of my favorite parts was when John wanted us to do the whisper voices again. Mm-hmm. Because just that type of stuff is so powerful. And that's what I want when it comes to, themes, be it comical, be it adventurous, be it mysterious. I just want the players to have an emotional connection with the game that they're playing. Amanda already asked that. Pat66 asks, do you tie one-shots into existing world or not? Yes. Yeah. I mean, we both, the ones we've written, we both do. I mean, Evelyn's mentioned it how many times today?
Yeah, I mean, it actually helps me with my world building. It gives, because these events are technically history now in the world, it adds to the lore, and these are things that have happened, and these are, so that it just adds more richness to the story and the history and the campaign overall.
And because my one-shots fall in Galarian, they very much are part of the world. So those 5 skeletons that we had from Bones of Lastwall are very much living. Oh, I guess not living. I guess that's the wrong word these days. Are very much present in the same world as my 5 outlaws are. And who knows? We may encounter them at some point if we were to venture down into Geb, which is, the heart of necromancy. It could very easily tie together. So, Pedroz, you knew what our goals were. Did we follow your expectations, or did some of us go off story and surprise you? Some of you surprised me. Some of you played them strong, and some of you gave me more than what I was expecting. I'll be honest, the direction John went, I really enjoyed it, because that made that character stronger. And actually, me, Vivi, and Evelyn had some side chats going on during that, and we ended up moving in directions with things because of what John did. I think each of the characters, I think each of the players, and again, this goes to the compliments to the players, brought something extremely strong to that one shot, which, allowed some excitement for me and gave me ideas of what I need to do to adjust it moving forward. Vivi asks, what is your favorite driving force for your players to start the quest for the one shot? Evelyn.
I mean, and this is kind of, except for my level 21 shot that I did, the request for them to complete a certain objective by either a mysterious figure or someone authoritative in the area, the leader of the area, whatever, who is giving them an objective to complete, because that kind of helps keep it in that structured, like, objective point. It's not a loose end, like, oh, I need you to go do this and might take a few days sort of situation. It is and hey, this is what we like you to complete, this is what you'll get paid if you complete it, that sort of thing. That is just the general, like, okay, you've got a job, you can get it done today, that's it. That's kind of what I like to do for that initial starting point.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the story too, right? I mean, my Skellies, they had to find out about themselves. That was their goal. They wake up with little to no memories that slowly come back via certain things that occur. And I think, depending on how you write it, but you have to have, and this goes back to, again, writing for theater, you have to have that inciting incident. You have to have that thing that captures the players. Well, we hit 8:00.
Yes, we did.
So this is about the time that we break forth the rhythm and we head out, right?
Yes. Now, it does not look like Jay is streaming tonight, so we'll have to figure out someone to raid. But if anybody has any last questions before we head out, please ask them. And then while we look for someone to go bring forth our hordes of mad chatters to their chat.
And don't forget, you can catch Blue Box every Tuesday night with Greyhawk Awakening at 5:00 Central, 6:00 Eastern. On Wednesday nights, Loremaster Arcanum at 5:45 Central, 6:45 Eastern. And Sundays, is the time changing on Sundays?
Sunday's still 1:30.
Okay, 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern. So make sure you check out all of those. Additionally, because I'm on here, I'm going to plug our Monday nights. We begin session 1 the 20th with Outlaws of Alkenstar. Please feel free to stop over at twitch.tv/roll for perception. Very excited. Lots of news. If you haven't joined the Discord already, make sure you join the Roll for Perception Discord. Lots of fun chit chat there. We'll also be sharing all of our information on World Anvil. The link will be in Discord actually later this week. So thank you all. You all have been fabulous. The questions were amazing.
Yes. Okay, so we're gonna head over and raid Trollord Games. So before we go, we have to do the thing.
Oh yeah.
If you watch tonight and you enjoyed the content that you have seen here on BlueBoxRPG and you haven't followed, and if you're a follower but haven't yet subscribed, or if you're a subscriber and you have committed the greatest of sins and let your subscription lapse, we have one question for you. What are you doing? All right, everyone, we're headed over to Trollord. Send them mad chattery and love. Bye, everyone.
Bye.